first thing is we have to make up our minds that we're actually going to do it. We're not just going to talk about it.
How do we do that? Because here we are at TED, we're just talking.
We need to set some hard goals for actually reducing the amount of oil that we use, and then creating markets so that new fuels and new sorts of transportation can come into the market and compete. So one of the first things we need to do is we need to stop hiding the costs of fossil fuels in our basically our April 15th tax returns and put them into the actual price of the fuels, like at the pump with gasoline.
You're not going to solve this at the federal level. There might be some subsidies that they provide for electric vehicles, some subsidies they do for natural gas, some subsidies for biofuels, but that's not where you're going to stop it. The way that we stop coal plants is plant by plant. You know, all of their permits, all of their, permissions, that's where we go in. We bring in 200 people into the public hearing. We say, we don't want our children to actually have to deal with, all your pollution, and we actually stop the permits. We don't do that for transportation. For whatever reason, no one shows up. When they decide to drill, no one shows up. It's important for us to show up.
For me, when I started walking, and I just started, I thought, oh, this is going to be really hard. This is going to I'm really going to be giving things up. What I discovered was that I got more than I could ever have imagined prior to that. Now, like you said, and I agree with you, not everyone is going to be able to do that. But what can we do? And I think there's things that we can do. We can start looking at rethinking our own place in our personal lives, to rethink how our environmental policy is. What is our environmental policy? Because I believe that there's some changes that are difficult for individuals to make or even communities to make. But as I mentioned in my talk, the government can help us. That's what the government's there for, I believe, is to help us, to encourage us, give us incentives to make a change. The president said, I'm going to need your help. Well, yes, Mr. President, you need our help, but we also need your help.
The easiest way to make the shift is first just get rid of all the subsidies for fossil fuels, which is starting to happen. Second is people in communities across the country calling for clean energy from their electricity providers. And then third is that we all come together and say that we can't have another Gulf oil disaster anywhere in the country, and that we need cars to change our engines, we need to end America's addiction to oil, and that'll only make us safer from terror, it'll clean our air, and it will basically save entire communities, the fishing industry, and entire regions of the country from what the Gulf has had to go through.
We need to create, I think, kind of a government lending agency, sort of like Carmi May. We would call it like Fannie Mae, but it helps people get low interest loans for low carbon energy using equipment. And at the same time, we also need to raise the price of oil so that alternative fuels as they come in can actually compete.
It's those kinds of incentives that we need to have in place so that ordinary people can do ordinary things to make a difference.
I mean, states are leading the way with policies requiring clean energy, but what we really need is a national cap on carbon pollution. If we just make carbon fuels expensive, then you're going to see things like wind power and solar rushing into the market.
And we actually have to say that this is what we want, and we have to stand behind it, because otherwise we're just going to go back to using more and more gasoline every year after this spill and saying, oh, those bad oil companies, they polluted the Gulf, but we were part of this.
So my work has been focused on how you actually distribute different types of renewable energy in order to create a more stable output. So you don't want to have only wind power or only solar power. So you usually have to combine different energy sources in order to have a more regulated output. So I made a project called the Energy Animal. You should Google it, energyanimal.org, and it's a device. It's really a concept. It's not the application itself is not really beautiful, but or competitive. But the idea is to make a device that combines the wind, the wave, and the sun into one single device. So you can actually create energy almost in any weather conditions. But then none of this energy are very competitive in itself. But the fact to combine them makes a more regular output. And you could chase two different things. You could chase where there's more energy available, so you could go where there's more wind or more sun. When it changes, you can just move the device. And you could also go where there's more demand. So it's a shift in how you create and distribute energy.
You know, we are going to be using oil for a long time, unfortunately. I wish I could tell you something different. But maybe something will come in that's like an enormous step change, but that's in technology. But there won't be space for that unless we've made room in the markets and we've created a platform where something could come in and really compete. And at the moment, nothing can compete because we're not charging the real price for the oil at the pump.
It is utterly possible for offshore wind power to replace fossil oil from the Gulf of Mexico, for example. Just in April, the state of Virginia released a study showing that Virginia alone, off its coastline, could produce enough electricity for 3.6 million electric cars. So imagine that times all our coastal states. You're talking about a lot of energy. It's when terrorists are able to blow up one nuclear power plant, or one huge coal plant and shut down electricity to entire regions, that makes us nationally insecure. It's when you have distributed energy coming from lots of different windmills, lots of different solar panels on a smart grid, so that if any one of them goes out, you don't paralyze a whole region, then that's smarter energy and it's better for national security.